Have you ever witnessed the beauty of one of North America's aquatic apex predators? In awe of its complex color pattern, with its varying dotted speckles, the palette of color on its body that even a rainbow couldn't represent? From little gold-like flakes on its back, to the greens, the pinks, and the chrome-like colors on its body. What a truly magnificent creature. The fish that I'm describing is the infamous steelhead trout, Oncharius micus. Though the beauty of this iconic North American fish is uncanny, their numbers in the wild are dwindling fast. Hi, my name is Frankie Sharif, and for my presentation for the Spring Semester Research Symposium of 2025, I am presenting my research on how to aid wild steelhead populations. Steelhead are in dramatic need of assistance. Their numbers have been dwindling down since the late 1940s. There must be a call for new management techniques. In the past 70 years, in North America, the steelhead trout population has dramatically declined to the point of the species being listed as threatened under the United States Endangered Species Act. There must be a call for new management techniques. We must take action to help aid the species to fight the possibility of steelhead trout going extinct by reevaluating past management practices having sportsmanlike angling practices. Oncharius micus is a unique species from the salmonoid family that goes by two names. Steelhead, which is a migratory species hatched in fresh water, then goes through the process of smoltification, which allows it to adapt from living in fresh water to living in salt water. Smolts generally begin to migrate at 2 years of age after hatching. Steelhead are native to the Pacific coast of North America. So what's the difference between steelhead and rainbow trout? Steelhead and rainbow trout are the same species, Oncharius micus. Steelhead are migratory. Rainbow trout stay in fresh water. Steelhead go through this multiplication process to adapt to living in salt water. Smolts usually migrate at 2 years of age. And rainbow trout live in fresh water their whole lives. Currently, our California state hatcheries stock a lot of year-old rainbow trout, in the hopes of some going through the process of multiplication to become steelhead. Then the fish that decide to become resident rainbow trout can be caught by recreational fishermen. Sounds like a pretty good deal, huh? But scientists from the Canadian Journal of Fisheries and Aquatic Sciences compiled hatchery data from 1948 to 2017 on the declining number of California's Central Valley steelhead. These researchers discovered, through breaking down scientific data, that the current protocol for releasing hatchery fish could actually be hurting wild steelhead populations, and that more diversity is needed when introducing hatchery fish into the wild by releasing them in smaller quantities, different locations, and different times of the year. Stocking S1, or 1-year-old trout, and not as many go through the process of multiplication like S2, or 2-year-old hatchery fish, which produce 7.8% more smolts than S1 fish, with S1 fish producing 31.6 more residual fish than S2 fish. The third reason is that the current protocol state hatcheries use to produce rainbow trout doesn't pull from a wide enough gene pool, which diminishes the wild steelhead genes. Preserving wild steelhead genetics. When stocking rainbow trout to help wild steelhead populations, state hatcheries must revise their current management practices. One reason why we must preserve steelhead genetics is because of a link in their DNA, and this affects their migration timing. This is important because if this section of DNA didn't influence different populations of wild steelhead differently, then all steelhead would spawn at the same time. Consequently, this makes it a dramatically harder competition for resources, which results in hurting wild steelhead populations. State hatcheries can help preserve wild steelhead genetics by spawning wild broodstock from a wider genetic range, preserving this section of DNA that influences steelhead migration time. Another thing that should be done to help increase wild steelhead populations is to help protect wild rainbow trout populations. Protecting and supporting wild rainbow trout populations can help increase steelhead populations because both of these fish are Oncharius micus, and a percentage of the offspring of the resident rainbow trout will turn into smolts, which will increase the wild steelhead populations. One huge advantage of this is that we are able to help increase the wild steelhead populations naturally, without having to introduce any hatchery-raised fish. 37.3% out of migrating smolts are produced by resident parents. Out of the total number of steelhead that returned, 19.3% had resident parents, meaning they came from rainbow trout, not steelhead parents. By protecting wild rainbow trout, they can dramatically be able to help increase the wild steelhead population. Another thing that we can do to help protect wild steelhead are using responsible angling practices. We can do this by using proper equipment that is sufficient in landing the fish and not playing the fish to complete exhaustion. So if you're a conventional gear angler, using the right size rod, poundage, and the right size line. If you're a fly fisherman, that could be using the correct size weight rod. When landing the fish, having sportsman's-like practices is key by keeping the fish in the water as much as possible and using barbless hooks to minimize handling of the fish to help keep the fish's mouth in its natural state as possible. Another key thing that could be done is practicing catching and release techniques for wild steelhead. On the screen here, you can see the difference between a barbed hook and a barbless hook. And you can see that the barbed hook has another section protruding that can damage wild steelhead's mouths. Working together to save steelhead trout. Review and improve hatchery management techniques. Use a larger gene pool for hatchery breeding. Encourage responsible angling practices. Protect wild rainbow trout populations. And support ongoing research and conservation efforts. It's possible to bring back wild steelhead populations to a healthy, sustainable number. We all just need to work together.